Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Watching the Boxes Fantasy Basketball Podcast, hosted by #basketball.com, your home for the very best fantasy basketball tools and articles on the internet. Go check them out at #basketball.com. I am your host, Mike Catron, and joining me as always is my co-host. He's got the madness in him this March. Can't say that. Apparently it's illegal. Tyler Watts. What's up, Tyler?
Does that mean I'm like crazy? Why can't you say that?
Because there's people keep saying all over the internet that March Madness is copyrighted, and we can't say it.
Who copyrighted it?
Probably the NCAA, who makes money, millions and tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars off of essentially child slave labor. That's right. Coming in with the hot takes already.
All right. Well, didn't know that, so that's interesting, I guess.
Yeah. Chew on that.
Chew on that factual.
Chew on that, everybody. Pay the kids. Come on. They can't even use their own likeness. Like, how crazy is that?
Dude, I'm just disappointed that they got rid of NCAA football. Man, that used to be like my favorite game when I was a kid. Now, like, they don't even make them anymore.
Yeah, they don't even bother. That was a good game.
No, it's not that they don't bother. It's they still made like a crap ton of money off those games. It's just the players started suing because they were using their likenesses.
Yeah, they should. I respect that.
And so then they had to stop making them. And I was like, no, it ruined such a good thing we had. We had a good thing. We didn't even know it.
I do miss the games, though. You could run. I just run the option all day.
Oh, dude, and they had so many
create a quarterback and run the option all day.
They had so many cool game modes, and I just remember the year that they did you could do all those special games. That was my favorite year. Like you could go back and you had to do Doug Flutie's Hail Mary and all those crazy games, and I just played that for, I swear, hours on end.
That was a great game. Shout out to the old NCAA college football, but no shout out to the NCAA for exploiting young children, or I guess old children, pretty much, but still young adults, and making money off of off of their talent. And this is that time of year where we get to where more money is bet than I think. Is it true that there's more money bet, especially casually, on the NCAA tournament than there is on the Super Bowl? Is that true? Have I read that correctly, Tyler?
Yeah, but it has a lot to do with they count the whole thing. Like the Super Bowl is one game.
True.
Whereas they count the whole tournament. So there's how many games? I mean, I don't think. I mean, obviously the Super Bowl is the largest game as far as betting, but at the tournament, yeah, there is, because there's so many games, right? And so many people just love to bet, especially on who's going to win. And, the bracket thing is big. And so they're like, oh, I think I know this team's definitely going to win. And so, plus every team is usually plus something, meaning you can, if you bet $1, you get more than $1 back if you're actually right. So people,
not only, for us degenerate gamblers out there, and if you have a gambling problem, get help. It's not okay. Bet responsibly. But not just the degenerate gamblers, such as possibly us, but everybody's mother, cousin, Linda from HR, everybody. They are all in a $5 bracket pool, $10. There's children. I was in a bracket pool once, and a 5-year-old had a perfect bracket through, I think, 3 rounds. And it made the news. It made the local news, because this 5-year-old had picked a perfect bracket. And I was like, this is trash. But it's completely random. And speaking of brackets, everybody out there, listeners, you could join the official Watching the Boxes bracket challenge on ESPN. Go check out the link on patreon.com/watchingtheboxes. You don't even have to be a Patreon subscriber to get to the link. But our Patreon subscribers have already joined. And if you're following me at Watch the Boxes on Twitter, or Tyler at Tyler P. Watts, we'll be tweeting out that link throughout the week, the winner, before the tournament starts anyway, the winner will get a special prize, and they will get a free entry to, they'll be one of the first entries to the Listener League next year. Pretty good deal.
Yeah, I mean, it's the best deal on the internet, Mike. This is a free entry to getting beat by Mike in the Listener League, which is, I mean, that's everyone's fantasy.
That is true. That is the really why they call it fantasy basketball. And I want to give a quick shout out to our Patreon subscribers out there, especially Stranger Toms and Mouse Defeat in a neck and neck battle for the finals in the boring listener redraft. I'm going to give less props to the very suspicious Tyler P. Watts, who is playing in a championship game against It's On like Doncic Kong, which is a great name. I hope they win. I hope they beat you, Tyler.
Yeah, it could happen.
Is currently tied in the Second Chance League, whose playoffs have not started and won't start until April. That'll be very interesting for everybody involved in the crap weeks to try to get their playoffs together. You know, this league's for fun, so like whatever. But I'm currently up 8-0 on you, Tyler. Like I just want to throw that out there.
Dude, my team is the worst team in that Second Chance League. I drafted, and it was a slow draft, and I swear every guy I picked got hurt like the day after I picked them.
Yeah, now
just
you
like
know,
an avalanche.
Now you know how I feel in the Boring Listener League. It was a terrible time for me, and hopefully next year we're going to be taking everybody's suggestions. We'll have a few more listener leagues, and yeah, you can get in that listener league by winning our Watching the Boxes bracket challenge. So I suggest joining us. It's going to be cool. I love doing the bracket every year. I have like a little formula I like to do. I'm not gonna spoil that because I don't want people taking easy road to victory here.
Wait, you got to help out the listeners, Mike. Okay?
Yeah.
So here, you got to just give them one. What's one upset you're picking in the first round? Come on now, just a little taste for them.
Just one upset. Okay, I'm gonna go with an upset. I think everybody's gonna have, so it doesn't really spoil the I guess the drama. Should I go with that or should I go with the? No, I'm gonna go with the obvious one. I'm going with Murray State. I think everybody's gonna have Murray State over Marquette. I think everybody wants to see our boy, who we are going to talk about here, Ja Morant, who's averaged about 25 points a game. I think everybody wants to see him kind of go on a Steph Curry-esque run. And who am I to bet against entertainment? Because that's what the NCAA tournament's all about: skipping work, watching basketball all day, and being fully entertained for basically 4 days straight. It's a great one of the great weekends of the year.
Oh, Mike, I thought you were going to go for a better one. One of my personal favorites. As far as the upsets. And I think this is an easy one. It's Florida over Nevada. I think, the big dogs are going to come. It's the 10 seed Florida, going to beat Nevada, move on, and potentially even beat Michigan. I think Florida might be a bit underrated.
I don't know. That's a lot of weight you're putting in there on Florida. I don't have that same feeling at all. So we're already at odds.
That's what makes the bracket fun, Mike. There's no rules.
I will actually give a second tip. I'm feeling generous today. I basically told the listeners to screw off just now, but because I wasn't going to help them, and now here I am helping them far too much. The Big Ten, at least formerly the Big Ten, now it's the Big 22 teams. Once again, as always, as every single year, has the most teams in the tournament. Because it's easily the best conference. Don't let anybody tell you any different. The Big Ten, at least used to. I think it's changing a little bit. There's still the old faithfuls of Izzo and Wisconsin, Minnesota, all that shit. The Big Ten actually plays defense, and that usually bodes well in the tournament. That's all I'm going to say.
So I had this crazy streak of picking Michigan State like every year in my bracket, and it hasn't worked out yet. But that may be again my pick. You never know.
That's interesting. And I think you're on. I actually do think you might be onto something there. But let's leave it at that because this is allegedly a fantasy basketball podcast. And I think what we should do is talk about the tournament and how who our listeners should be watching. Because this is that time of the year, it's the playoffs. I think you guys know what you're doing. Obviously, there's people getting sat all around the league. We're not going to be able to completely predict who's going to be sitting, who's not going to be sitting. Maybe you picked up Fred VanVleet to get some minutes. Maybe you like Harry Giles. Maybe you like the fact that he's getting more minutes in Sacramento. Like, good on you. Like, Joakim Noah's still kicking it. Like, you should definitely be riding Joakim Noah. Like, I think you guys know what you're doing. Instead, I think we're going to focus on how to prepare for next year's rookie drafts out there for all you cats who are either in dynasty leagues, keeper leagues, whatever leagues you happen to be in. Even if you're in a regular league, I'd actually suggest putting a rookie draft into your redraft league. It makes for an extra draft. It's a lot of fun. There's no reason not to. And since it's March Madness, what better time to talk about the rookies than now?
Yeah, and I mean, we're going to see – some people will see some of these players for the very first time, right? Because there's a lot of people who don't really watch much college basketball until –
some of those people name might be Mike Catron.
It always makes the tournament kind of fun. And I'll say this right off the top. I've done this for like the last 5 years, and more so this year than anything. I think having a couple good games in the tournament could vault some of these guys from that kind of late first round or maybe even early second round range into the lottery. Like, there's kind of 5, 6, maybe 7 players that are kind of head and shoulders above the class. And then there seems to be a large kind of clump of players that all could be very fungible and interchangeable. It's going to depend a lot on the team picking, and maybe these last couple games could have a big factor in, does this guy go 13th or does he go 32nd?
Yeah, I think there's kind of a consensus that this is a top-heavy draft, that, there's a top 5, maybe top 6, like you're saying, of guys who are going to go, and then it's kind of wide open, especially once you get past, like, out of the lottery. It's always kind of wide open after then, but even after the top 10, it's pretty wide open, and this tournament could really make the difference for a lot of these guys. And also, I actually think, the league, it keeps getting better, and there's a lot of like role-playing talent out there. There's a lot of guys who are going to be just like 3-and-D wings. I see a lot of wing type players out there after the lottery, just kind of hanging around. There's always like 3 to 5 guys who make it. They end up being really good role players, and teams need role players like you. And sometimes those role players ended up being pretty decent fantasy players.
And we talk about this a lot, right? I think any pick after the lottery, if you could get a guy who plays a role on your team, even be that a 20 to 25-minute role every game for like a decade, that's a successful pick in the late first round. And some people don't realize that, right? They think like, oh, he's a first-round pick. He should be a stud and a starter and, play 32 minutes a game. And that just isn't really realistic. And a lot of teams, especially like playoff teams, they want to go for a safer role player instead of, a crazy upside guy like a Giannis or a Bruno Caboclo, right? Like, sometimes it works out and he turns into Giannis, and other times he's Bruno Caboclo. And
yeah,
I mean, you're not getting anything from that. So some of those contending teams want a safer player. Like, I mean, the Mavericks took one in the second round with Jalen Brunson, right? And we've seen Brunson playing better as of late. But like on a contending team, Brunson's probably like a 25-minute role player, like a backup point guard, backup combo guard. So the contending teams want that a lot of times.
That's true. Sometimes, actually, there's quite a few teams that do well in the draft. In fact, it's one of the only things the Bulls franchise seems to continue to do well in is finding these like really good role players. Almost the definition of a top tier role player is Taj Gibson. Like Taj Gibson is still a starter in the league, and he was like a mid-round pick for the Bulls. I think he might have been a late round pick for the Bulls if I'm trying to remember properly. So there could be a lot of and Taj Gibson's was fantasy relevant pretty much up until middle of this year, earlier this year.
Yeah, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a role player, and I mean, there's plenty of guys who are role players, like you said, who are filling even standard league rosters in that kind of 70, 82 end of your bench range.
Yeah. So let's talk about the games to watch and why you should watch them. And I'm going to start with the game I already mentioned, Murray State Marquette, and I want to talk about my man, Ja Morant, the man from Bear Island, Jorah Mormont's son, Ja Mormont. That's a Game of Thrones reference for all you listeners out there who are not watching Game of Thrones, which starts very, very soon. This podcast is not sponsored by Game of Thrones, but if Game of Thrones wants to throw some sponsorship dollars towards the Watching the Boxes podcast, feel free to get me at Watch the Boxes on Twitter. But yeah, Ja Morant, Tyler. I'm like eerily excited about Ja Morant because I think he is like the Bulls are going to get lucky, but they're not going to get Zion Williamson lucky. I think they're going to get Ja Morant lucky, and I think he'd be a really, really fun pick for the Bulls. He is projected to be the second pick in the draft. Some people even have him as the third pick in the draft. That'd be a mistake. I personally think he is averaging almost 10 assists a game, 20. Almost 25 points, and even almost a block a game. Now he's playing for Murray State, kind of doesn't play a lot of hard competition, but this guy almost looks like some sort of like Trae Young, Russell Westbrook, Steph Curry type of hybrid young guard who loves to shoot.
Yeah, and I think regardless, the Bulls are going to get a point guard, and we can talk about that if you want. And the other point guard that they could pick, even if they stay at kind of that 4 or 5 range, I think they're going to get a point guard. And that dude is a lot of fun to watch too. Now he only played 5 college games, but we won't talk about him quite yet. Yeah, Morant has some crazy athletic gifts, and he can score, he can shoot, he can pass, he can rebound. He's a really good rebounder. He averages 1.8 steals and 0.8 blocks per game. Now he's playing 36.5 minutes a night, kind of being that do-everything guy for Murray State. It'll be really interesting to see if the Cavs get the second pick. Do they immediately make Colin Sexton their 6th man and draft Morant, or do they actually go for RJ Barrett and let Morant fall to either the Suns or the Bulls picking 3rd? So that'll be kind of an interesting storyline to watch when we get closer to the draft. Morant may be my favorite player to watch in this draft class, even more than Zion. Like, Morant could just kind of do everything, and he just does so much for that Murray State team that it's just really, really fun to watch.
Yeah, that game is Thursday. It's one of the first day games. I think it's not the first round of day games. It's the second round of day games, but I am definitely going to be watching Murray State. I hope Ja goes far in the tournament. I think if you're in a rookie draft, is he conceivably the number 1 pick in a rookie draft when it comes to fantasy basketball? If you're let's just say you're in a non-turnover league.
Can
you make a case?
You could make a case. That's not a lot of that's going to depend on fit and where, if the Knicks pick first and they take Zion and they just say, we're going to throw the ball in his hands and let him, kind of do everything, it's going to be hard to pass him up. But at the same time, Morant can do a little bit of everything. Williamson's going to shoot some pretty good, percentage from the field, but he could struggle from the free throw line, and Morant's not going to do that. Now he might struggle from the field, which will kind of balance that out. I would probably go Zion. I think that's the safe pick, but I could see making the case.
Yeah, I also think the fact that assists are super rare, and there's a really, really good chance that Morant goes to a team that needs, I think, a point guard. I even think if he ends up in Cleveland or Atlanta, they'll treat him like a point guard. And they'll be giving him the ball. They'll put the ball in his hands. I think he's more of a playmaker than really any of these top crap teams. He's more of a point guard than anyone they have. So I guess except for Mike Conley. Poor Mike Conley needs to get off the Grizzlies. But
I think if the Grizzlies move up there, they could pick him, and that's a whole different story. You know, I think that they're kind of ready to move on from Conley. I think we've seen that at the trade deadline, and they could make Conley kind of a 2-guard like the Pelicans have tried to do in the past with Drew Holiday. So that's kind of something to watch there too.
Yeah, I think it's potential, but the fact that like assists are just super rare, and this guy looks like he will be one of the few players who could probably average 8+ assists in the league.
Here's the crazy thing.
I'm interested. He's a super athlete.
Here's the crazy thing too. If they get bounced in that first game by Marquette, which is a possibility, right? Marquette is a number 5 seed. Like Marquette is not a like any kind of trash team or any means. We could see Morant drop, and we've seen this with a few players, and it kind of the same thing happened to Luka Doncic, right? Like Murray State's not a huge team, and they didn't play the toughest schedule in the world. And especially at the top, NBA GMs sometimes overthink it. And they're like, oh, this guy.
Does anyone recall when Luka Doncic didn't go first or second?
Yeah, right. That's what I mean. Like, oh, this guy played for Duke. He played for Arizona. He played for Kentucky. He played for this team. It's like, don't overthink it. Take the best player. I'll say this. The drawback about Morin is he only weighs like 170 pounds. So he's not a big guy, and he's skinny. I mean, he's like 6'3", 170 pounds. And, like – they're going to pick nits, and that's going to be one of them. And so I could see a team going for someone like RJ Barrett because he fits a mold more. And that'll be really the most interesting thing about Zion, if you really want to talk about him, is we've never really seen a player like Zion Williamson in the NBA. Like a guy
he's a freak. He's ultra athletic. The comparison is athletically is LeBron James that people are giving. And it's kind of one of those questions, like, what would it have looked like if LeBron James had to play 1 year in college? I'm like, the answer probably is something like Zion.
Here's the crazy part about that, though. Like, how tall is LeBron?
Well, he's like 6'8".
Yeah, and so that's basically the same size that Zion is, right? He's lifted at 6'7", but he weighs 285 pounds.
Yeah, that's the part that's like there's no comparable human being almost to who he is.
Right, and I made the case like in my article, which you can read, my mock draft, like literally he's the same height as Luka Doncic and 70 pounds heavier.
And able to basically float through the gym. Like,
right.
I mean, just go look up Zion Williamson block.
And that's what's crazy, though, is like, some teams, may overthink it. And now I think he's going to be the number 1 pick. But some teams will be a little bit scared, and they will tell, like, scouts, and you'll hear the reports after the tournament ends, like when we get up to the draft time of, like, there's no comp for this player. That's okay. Sometimes that's a good thing, right? But yeah, so there's never really been a player like him, and teams look for any reason to kind of get scared off, and so that's the same thing's going to happen to Morin, I think.
They certainly do, and they're all dumb for. If anyone looks off Zion, they should be fired immediately. But let's talk about Zion. Let's talk about the entire Duke squad. This might be the first time I ever will watch a 1-16 matchup.
Well,
even
for like a quarter.
That Virginia loss, like I didn't watch it because I was like, I don't watch 1-16 matchups. They're pretty boring. But I'll watch Duke dunk all over somebody because they got potentially three top 5 players in the draft: Cam Reddish, RJ Barrett, and of course Zion.
Yeah. So Barrett, Zion, I think he's going to be the number 1 pick regardless of which team wins the lottery. I don't think it matters.
It doesn't matter.
I think he's kind of, separated himself from this class. So I think we can throw that out. It'll be interesting. The thing I'm most looking forward about Zion is to see what kind of playmaking he can do in the NBA. He's only averaging 2.2 assists per game. it'll be really interesting to see if some team lets him handle the ball a little bit more and pass a little bit, and if he can go full LeBron mode, or if he's more of a, big man who can get, 3.5 assists, especially for fantasy.
Yeah, is he like an offensive Draymond Green? Could he be a facilitator like Draymond is, but mostly kind of like a all-around athletic, weird position type of guy? Like I don't think anyone knows what Zion is, and like that's kind of the most intriguing thing about him is like, and also kind of maybe the scary thing about him, because if he goes to the wrong team, like let's say the Orlando Magic, who I don't think actually they're probably going to make the playoffs, so I actually don't think they can get Zion Williams.
Oh no, they're going to be in the lottery, man. They're picking
Really?
they're picking 11th right now.
Oh God, there's a 1 in God knows chance. Let me look. Oh no, there's a 1% chance that Orlando gets Zion. That's scary because they haven't been able to figure out what to do with any single one of their prospects ever. And this really takes this is going to take a coach who basically takes all the just takes the training wheels off and says, you could be our point guard, you could be our center, you could be whatever the fuck you want. Like, just go for it. And there's not a lot of teams and coaches out there that I think have that kind of mentality.
Well, and what will be super interesting is you're going to have to build a team around him, and in some ways the same way the Mavericks are trying to build it around Luka Doncic, right? Like, Luka Doncic is the point guard, but you need someone who can guard the point guard out there on the floor. Like, you can't play him as a point guard on both ends because he can't defend the other team's point guard. I think Zion will a lot be the same way. Like, he'll be kind of a scorer, wing, maybe point guard on offense, but on defense, he's going to have to guard 4s and 5s. He's just too big. He's quick, but he's not quick enough to stay with, some of those elite first step point guards. So that'll be really interesting. You're going to have to kind of build the team around him too, which, as you mentioned, some teams are not good at doing things like that.
Yeah. Some teams just can't even figure out what to do with a guy who could stand in the corner and shoot threes. They try to make him do other stuff. It just doesn't make any sense. But Zion Williamson definitely – I actually do think there's a case for Ja Morant to be number 1 in your rookie draft. But Zion Williamson, if you take him number 1, perfectly fine. Actually, probably encouraged. Let's go there. Where does Zion Williamson go due to the hype? Include the hype. Not where you want to take him. Where do you think the average draft position for Zion Williamson is next year?
Especially if he goes to the Knicks, I think he's a top 50 pick, which is crazy, and it shouldn't be, but it will be.
Yeah. I think I was actually going to put the over-under exactly at 50. And I think I'm going to think he's going to go in the top 50. I don't know if he'll it's fantasy basketball. It's fantasy basketball. Even if he's playing a ton, there's his free throws are, suspect. How many threes he's going to make is super questionable. And
he's not going to make hardly any, man. He's not a shooter.
I'm sure he'll try. I'm sure he'll try to hit some threes, right? But if you can't do everything, you often cannot end up even in that third tier. Like, we got your top tier, then you got your end of first round, second round guys who are the second tier. Then you got, kind of filling out the second and the third round, your third tier. You really can't even get to the third tier unless you're kind of doing everything. Like Otto Porter gets into the third tier when he's doing everything slightly above average, right? But all it takes is one big glaring hole in your game. And I'm mostly talking about roto leagues. If you're in a head-to-head league, this is probably a little bit different. You could punt around Zion Williamson. He could be maybe a top 50 player in a head-to-head league. That's certainly possible, especially when you look at the steals and blocks.
Yeah, the worry is, you mentioned it, no threes, probably a negative in free throws. So there's a worry. And then the steals and blocks are not going to be near as plentiful as they were in college. I don't know how much of a rim protector any team's going to make him because he's only 6'7". So, if he's averaging like, 3/4 of a block and a steal, like that's fine, but it's not elite in either category. So you're going to pick some wards real fast. I'm not going to pick him in the top 50, even if he goes to the Knicks and they promise him he's going to play 32 minutes a night. Plus, being so heavy, one of the things that worries some people is his conditioning. He's gotten out of shape quickly, and so maybe during the beginning of the season he's working himself back into shape too. That's something to worry about.
You know what? Actually, I'm a little worried. I'm a little bit more worried about it, not because he's out of shape or anything like that. I mean, it doesn't help, right? But that amount of weight, that amount of power. I mean, he destroyed a Nike shoe, just by landing on the ground. There's an athlete. Now, granted, his the way he ran, the way he jumped, the way he was absolutely aggressively super athlete who would twerk his body and juke almost directly parallel to the way he was running. His name was Derrick Rose, and those knees did not last terribly long. Now, Derrick Rose was, I think, kind of had the right body type and bad genetics to end up in a more injury prone situation, along with the fact that Tibbs is a lunatic. But you gotta worry about someone who's that super athletic as they get older. That's the athleticism goes, and your knees can't take that kind of pounding.
Yeah, I'm with you there. But I don't think that's going to stop him from being the first pick,
No, not at all. Not in the draft. I'm thinking more of a long-term fantasy value type of situation. But let's talk about the rest of these guys on this Duke team. RJ Barrett. Some people even have.
You should love this guy because you know who his biggest comp is, don't you?
Nah. Is it Wendell Carter Jr.?
No, it is one of your former Bulls.
Yeah, you're right, because Wendell Carter Jr. is better than this guy, so it can't be Wendell Carter Jr.
Oh, come on. This dude's a wing. Come on. He used to play for the Bulls.
Sweet Luol Deng?
No, Jimmy Buckets.
Nah. Get out of here. Who's comping RJ Barrett to Jimmy Buckets? Get the hell out of here.
So Barrett really kind of burst onto the scene, 2 years ago when he was 17 and he led Canada to that under-19 World Championship where they beat the U.S. Barrett is a good player and is actually a little bit underrated now, I think.
He's a better three-point shooter than probably Jimmy Butler.
He can do a lot of things already. It's going to take him a little bit maybe to settle into the NBA. I don't think he's going to be like, a superstar from minute one, but Barrett's averaging 23 points a game, 7.5 rebounds, 4.2 assists, 2 3-pointers. So he can do a little bit of everything. I think Barrett's going to end up being a really good long-term player. The first couple years may be a little bumpy. So they got to remind, you got to think about that when you're drafting him in a rookie draft. But I don't think many players have the upside that Barrett does. And he didn't shoot great from three-point this season. Like, he only shot 31.5% despite making 2 threes a game. And he's only a 66% shooter from the free throw line, which is not good.
It's not good. And that's to me, that's a huge hole. And actually, also kind of a red flag when it comes to rookies. Bad free throw shooters usually don't end up figuring out how to be like a good NBA three-point shooter. That's very rare.
Yeah, and I mentioned that how many years ago with Lonzo Ball, right? That the bad free throws probably meant he wasn't going to be a good foul shooter. The thing that I will say about Barrett is, he always seems to be improving, which is good, right? And this class lacks a ton of shooting. Like, there are not many guys who are good three-point shooters in this entire draft class. So I'm still taking Barrett probably third in any kind of rookie draft. Just think he has a great potential, and he's going to be an NBA player because he's already probably on a league average NBA defender from the minute he steps on the court, and he has the potential to grow into a well above average defender.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think there's he could easily go third in a rookie draft, but it's not, to me, it's not a like clear cut at all. Like I think there's kind of a big opening with these next handful of players that are, you would maybe say, is in this tier, and I actually think there might be some players who are injured and have not come back to college basketball, who you could make an argument with.
You could make an argument, and this is the guy I think the Bulls picked, Darius Garland, point guard from Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Definitely a top 5 prospect in this class. Probably the best shooter in the entire class. No joke. Has a great handle, but he got hurt, and he only played 5 games for Vanderbilt. And the question becomes, what do those medicals even look like, right? He turned 19 in January. He's 6'2", great handle, great shooter. But, you know, we saw Michael Porter Jr., who most people projected to be the #1 pick, all the way up until he hurt that back and he had surgery. And then he fell to 14th, and we still haven't seen him play an NBA game. So, you know, Garland is kind of a total mystery as far as where he's going to fall. He did tear his meniscus. We do know that he hurt his meniscus, which doesn't seem like the absolute worst injury, right? But I think he has the potential to be a very special NBA player. And maybe if he's stuck in college basketball and was healthy, he might be rivaling that Jai Morant hype. Like, he's a super fun player to watch. But, you know, only 5 games is going to definitely scare some teams.
Yeah, and I also might scare some people off of him even in a rookie draft. So that might be someone you could, if you have a later pick in a rookie draft, you would want to target.
If he dips below 4, I would take him, even if the medicals aren't great. Because here's the thing: you mentioned he could be a big assist guy. He's gonna steal. He's gonna score. He's gonna shoot threes. Like, he's already becoming a pretty good fantasy player. Whereas, I mean, we'll talk about some of these other guys. Their fantasy game isn't great, especially for minute 1. Like, if the Bulls or someone who picks this guy that he's going to play minutes at point guard almost right away, he's going to produce.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would go all the way in on him like you are. You seem to be a lot more confident in Darius's ability to come back from this injury and then be a versatile fantasy basketball player. I'm actually looking at a big man who might be someone you would take 4th, maybe even 3rd. And I'm looking at Brandon Clark out of Gonzaga, the Wiley Zags, who are playing on Thursday as well, a 116 matchup. I will not be watching. I'll be, you know, trying to, you know, actually eat food at that point in my life. I think it's kind of like the boring games. I guess Villanova St. Mary's is going to be on if you really want to watch that one. But Brandon Clark in college, he's an older college player. He's actually 22 and a half years old, but only a junior. But that often means he's kind of ready for the NBA, and he is a 6'8" forward who is averaging 3 blocks a game in college right now. I know the blocks don't translate often 1-to-1, but he seems like a fairly versatile player. And the blocks are always a very intriguing stat to focus on, because that there's very rare that you have someone who has the potential of getting a ton of blocks. And unlike someone like Mo Bamba, who basically didn't play, it seems like Brandon Clark's kind of NBA ready.
Well, he has to be, right? He's 23 years old. So
yes.
if you're not NBA ready at this point, when are you going to be NBA ready? The fouls limited his playing time a little bit this year. He only played 27.6 minutes a game. And, you know, we talked about a similar thing last year with a guy like Jaren Jackson Jr., right? Like, these guys try to block everything. Sometimes the fouls get you in some serious trouble. You know, this guy Clark, man, I in a rookie draft, now it depends on what kind of team you have, I guess.
Yeah.
If I'm a rebuilding team, which should be the teams picking in the top 3, 4, 5 of a rookie draft, I probably don't really want Clark, because
he's 22.
And you know what I mean? Like, he's gonna be an NBA player. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But he's not gonna. He doesn't shoot threes. He took 23 3-point attempts this season. Over
That's
his
true,
three.
and
That's not even this season. That's over his 3 years. He played for San Jose State and then he transferred to Gonzaga. 23 3-point attempts. No threes.
That's pretty brutal. And also in today's game where even sinners are kind of required to shoot threes, that's a tough thing to come back from.
Right. But you mentioned his defense, right? The defense is good. He brings some versatility. He can actually get out on the perimeter and guard a little bit. He's small, too. He's 6'8". 6'8", 213 pounds is not big in the NBA. So he's kind of a guy who's going to have to try to guard, like, forwards, and I don't know how well that's going to go. He played a lot as just kind of a middleman at Gonzaga, and, man, I don't know. I'm a little worried about where this guy fits in the NBA.
Well, I mean, I think it's, with small ball, he does have a place that maybe at the 4. And he's not a stretch 4, right? He's not a stretch 4, which is kind of disappointing. And that hurts his fantasy value. But I think what he does bring is someone who can stay on the court. He's a good offensive player. He's a good defensive player. And sometimes you take a big swing with, like I said, someone like Mo Bamba, and the guy doesn't play.
Yeah, he's already probably nearly a league average defender, which is good, right? He's gonna play minutes because he can defend and he can do some things on the offensive end. I definitely would not be looking at him in the top 5 of my rookie draft, especially if I was a rebuilding team. Now, if I was a kind of contending team and I, for some reason, got a higher pick, sure, he's fine. But he's a guy I don't think he's ever a superstar. Like, if you're going for a superstar in your rookie draft, I don't think you take Clark.
That's fair. I think he's a very solid, capable, someone who, if he finished in the top 120 his rookie year, you'd go, okay. Like, that's fine.
Dude, there's a lot of guys.
And that's a valuable player.
There's a ton of guys in this draft that, man, they could be, a top, I don't even want to say like 20 or 30. Let's try top 40, top 50 player, or they could literally like play out their rookie contract and then not be in the NBA anymore. Like, there's a lot of low floor players in this draft. I will admit
there's a lot of unknowns. I actually think the last player. Did we talk about Cam Reddish?
No, we didn't.
Go ahead.
We can. I am pretty worried about this guy's overallness. He shot 35.6% from the field this year, and 76% from the foul line.
Not good.
That's scary, right? And you would think that with those other 2 great players on the team, he would shoot better, right? Because those guys are taking a lot of the attention away. He's slightly older for a freshman. He turns 20 years old in September. Now, that's not old by any means, don't get me wrong, but that'll scare some teams a little bit because
that's old when it comes to talking about freshmen.
Right. So he's 6'8" with a 7'1" wingspan. That was positive. He shot a lot of 3-pointers, but he only hit them on 33%. He took a lot of contested shots, which is a worry. Now, he did average good steals and blocks, right? He averaged 1.8 steals and half a block a game, which is pretty good for a wing player. He's a guy with crazy potential, but I don't really like his jumper.
Yeah, I'm scared of that jumper.
So for me, I'm a little scared off. In my mock draft, which you can read, I have him going 7th to the Grizzlies. So I have him actually falling that far. Man, I don't know. Some guys think he's a top 3 player. I'm just not there.
Yeah, and I think it's mostly because he is a really, really good ball handler. He does look like he has NBA moves already. He's long. He's athletic. And it looks like even though he's a prospect, right, he's someone who has all the pieces of what a really good NBA player looks like, other than the fact that right now he doesn't have it all together and he's shooting pretty poorly.
Yeah.
Those are 2 big red flags.
Here's what I'll say, right? And I think I wrote this in my piece. He has top 3 natural talent in this draft. Like, if you just line up all these guys and just, play them on their God-given ability.
Yeah.
He's probably a top 3 player, but he really needs to work to be a top 3 NBA player because the skills are all there, but they're just not together at this moment.
It's going to take a while. Like this is not a player who's going to pan out next year. This is not someone who's going to be relevant on your team. If you're in one of those bigger dynasty leagues, maybe you take the long-term approach. If it doesn't cost you a whole lot to keep him around throughout his rookie contract, maybe by the end of the rookie contract, he's actually the second best player in this draft. It might be worth taking him in the top 5 of your rookie draft in the longer term if that's something you can stomach. But I think it's going to take a while for Cam Reddish to pan out. There's another player who is in these top tiers that we have to talk about. That's Jarrett Culver from Texas Tech, playing on Friday at one of the early games against Northern Kentucky. Northern Kentucky, the home of racism.
I am not going to go there.
That's right. I said it.
I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Right.
Culver is a top 10 pick right now. He can probably push himself into the top 5 with a great tournament.
Yeah, this is someone who, like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Like, when he goes 3rd overall because he played really well, or 4th overall because he played really well, is that a deceptive? Is that a deceptive problem for someone who's looking to draft someone who might be a really good prospect in fantasy basketball?
Yeah, and then so I don't know. I like the kid. He's a sophomore, but he just turned 20 years old, so it's not like he's super old for being a sophomore. His shooting is a little bit questionable. He hit 35% as far as you're talking about his college career, over 274 attempts, but this season he only hit 32.3% from 3, so I'm a little worried about that, especially when you couple it with he's only a 68.2% free throw shooter during his college career. Not great. What he can do is he can score. He can play make. They actually kind of made him more of a combo guard this year, let him handle the ball a lot more. He's averaging 3.6 assists per game on the season. I like the kid's game. I think, if he has a couple good games, that's really going to shoot him up the draft boards. His defense is really good too.
Yeah, he's a very, very good defender. He's 6'6", pretty long. So he's one of those guys where when you worry about guys staying on the court, sometimes these guys who play offense, they don't play defense. They can't stay on the court, and he could kind of do both. He's someone who could definitely be on the court.
He's a great mix of safety and upside this draft. Like he's a guy who could be a really, really good, like, kind of all-star level player, but he also has a pretty high floor.
Yeah. To me, not a prospect that's screaming out to be picked with like a top 3 pick in a draft. Like, I'm not gonna go Zion, Ja, and then Jarrett Culver. If you want to take a big swing, and this is probably the last guy that I would, not the last guy I would take a big swing on. I think there's some other interesting guys out there that I'm sure Tyler will definitely talk about, including a guy who's going to set the NCAA record in steals, which is pretty crazy that that's happening right now, and that no one seems to know or pay attention, mostly because that guy plays for Washington. But the one guy I think I would take a swing on personally is Bol Bol.
Oh, I like him. I have him. So when I first started looking at this class, I had him as a top 5 pick. And it's really hard to say when these like freshmen are just coming out of high school, because mostly all you can find is like highlight films, and so it's really hard to judge anybody on a highlight film.
You know who's got a good track record? Children of former NBA players.
But here's what I'll say about Bull, right? He's going to probably be a later lottery pick because he got hurt, and he had a navicular bone surgery, which is a foot thing for anyone who doesn't know.
And big men and feet.
Yeah, but he's 7'3" with a 7'8" wingspan. And he averaged 20. He only played 9 games for Oregon, which is a ridiculously small sample. But he averaged 21 points, 9.6 rebounds, 2.7 blocks, shot 56% from the field, and 75% from the free throw line.
and he can hit threes.
Yeah, he has shot 52% on his 25 NCAA 3-point attempts.
Like, hey, super, super small sample size, but like anyone who's been paying attention to Bull before he got hurt, even when you look at him in high school, the guy's an athletic freak, but also he can shoot. And so he's got an incredibly giant wingspan, which bodes well for blocks at the NBA level. Athletic, but he scores. He shoots well, and that entire combo. And hey, 76, almost 76% from free throw, even though it's a small sample size. That's that's a modern day NBA center. You're talking. I mean, look at how important people think John Collins is. Where people had Jared Allen going into this draft. I'm not putting the Bull up there because of the injury just yet, but ceiling wise, you could be looking at someone who eventually gets to that third tier. That he eventually could be a top 30 player.
Yeah, it's a ways off, but yeah, you're not wrong about that. And the medicals again are going to play an important factor on this player as far as where he gets drafted. You know what I mean? Because if that foot's not healing right, and you're going to know, because if he's slipping to the late first round or even like outside the lottery, you're going to know there's something wrong with that foot.
Yeah, if he goes top 10 though, like take your shot, I think, because
it depends on what team picks him in the top 10, because some of those teams are known to not have the best medical staff and get the best medical information from the prospects.
Chicago.
So if he goes to the wrong team, I might be a little worried. But if he goes to the right team in the top 10, I will feel pretty good about him going forward.
Yeah, and I think to me, that's my big swing. Like I said earlier, I like Brandon Clark because I just think he's kind of all around a good player. I mean, the percentages, like the 3-pointer aren't there. That sucks. But I think he's like kind of like the safest bet with a top pick in a rookie draft. Not obviously not 1 and 2. Like I said, 1 and 2, pretty obvious. RJ Barrett, maybe 3 if you really feel strongly about him. But if I'm taking a big swing, it's Bull.
Yeah. So I'll mention a couple guys I really kind of like. DeAndre Hunter, who's a forward from Virginia. And that's kind of a guy you can watch. Fantastic 3-point shooter. Hit 43.9% of his 132 college 3-point attempts.
It's pretty good.
He's a sophomore. Now, he turns 22 in December, so he's an older guy. And he's only a sophomore, which is weird. I don't quite understand that, but 6'7", 225, but he's one of the more versatile defenders in the NCAA. So that's good. I really like the kid. I like his game. Some people have him going to the top 5. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but I think if he has a couple good games in the tournament, he's another guy who could push his way, kind of right up in the mix. As far as the big teams that people are going to watch, right, keep your eye on Kobe White for North Carolina, a guard. Kind of had a breakout season. Not too many people saw him. In a class that's weak on shooters, he's a pretty good shooter. Shot 50.8% on 2-point field goals this year, 36% on his 3-pointers. I like him. I think he's pushing himself into the lottery, and with a couple good games in the tournament, could push his way all the way up into the top 10. And then the other guy I'll mention, a guy that you didn't even know about.
No.
From Gonzaga. You want to try to say his name? See if you can do it. I love it.
He is from Toyama, Japan. Will this be the first Japanese player in the league?
Ooh, that's something you have to look up, because I do not know the answer to that question.
I'll look that up, but his name, I believe, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, which, as we all know, the track record is poor, Rui Hachimura.
So the thing I like about him, he's a forward for Gonzaga. So if you're looking for a team to watch the tournament, he started playing basketball at 14. So he's really still growing. He's only 21 years old. Averaged over 20 points for Gonzaga, a steal, 0.8 blocks in 30 minutes a night, shot over 60% from the field and 74% from the free throw line. He's got a really good mid-range shot, which makes people encouraged that he's going to be able to develop a three-point shot when it comes to the NBA. Now, he hasn't shot a ton of three-point attempts as far as Gonzaga. He also has a 7'2" wingspan. Teams are going to love this kid. I have him going in the late lottery to the Timberwolves. I think him and Towns in the front court would just be a really, really interesting pairing.
Well, he's going to have to figure out how to start over Taj Gibson first. But
yeah, but I mean, in a couple years, Taj Gibson's going to be on his way out. You know what I mean? So that's what I mean. He's kind of someone Taj Gibson can groom a little bit. I'm not saying he's going to start from day one, but in a couple years when this guy's, getting closer to his potential, and this guy has a big upside, I think, because he's literally only played basketball for 7 years. I mean, there are 10-year-olds in this country who played basketball for 7 years.
Exactly. And there's a decent look at a track record of guys who came to the game late and then figured it out really quick and then looked good and then started looking better and better. And this guy is averaging 20 points a game, shoots well, and is long enough and athletic enough to be an NBA player. I think that pedigree just really bodes well. And so if you're looking for someone who maybe has staying power in the league, especially with those mid-tier rookie picks and a rookie draft, Ryu Hachimura, probably shouldn't say it like that, is a good way to spend a mid-round pick. Why not take a chance on a guy who's a really good scorer and has all the NBA tools?
All right, so now I'll talk about your man. You want to try to say this name too, because this one's kind of a little bit tough.
I do not want to figure out how to say this guy's name. I have no idea. Matisse Eibold.
Oh, you did good. I'm impressed. So Mike says to me, right, I think there's a guy in this class who's about to break the steals record, and that was all Mike knew, I'm pretty sure.
If you don't notice, everyone, I don't pay attention to the college basketball, and I haven't since the heartbreaking, what was it, the 2005 loss of Illinois, the U of I, the Illinois Fighting Illini, to UNC, and that was the end of my college. That was into my college, I guess, basketball watching. I was as good as it could get as a U of I fan, someone who grew up near the U of I, and it was never going to get any better. It's only going to get worse, and I was obviously right, and they made the right choice. I got right out. So right now is the first time I pay attention to college basketball, is the week before March Madness, and I think it's incredible, absolutely incredible that there's someone who is about to break the steals record.
Yeah, so he's 22 years old. He started all 4 years for Washington. He's averaging 3.4 steals a game and 2.2 blocks.
Yeah, and I think that's the crazier part, is that he is a 6'5" small forward, but averaging 3.4 steals and 2.2 blocks.
And he's a good three-point shooter. He shot 36% in his college career. Now, this year he's been struggling a little bit. He's only hit 31% of his three-pointers, but he's got 525 NCAA attempts and shooting 36%, which is good, right? It's a lot of attempts too, pretty safe sample size. Someone is going to pick him in the first round. He's immediately going to play a role for a team, and the plan will be to make him into a 3-and-D monster.
Yeah, the worst case scenario is that he's a 3-and-D off the bench guy who is super competent. That seems like the worst case scenario.
Yeah, I think that this guy, in the right team, in the right system, could be a player who gets picked in the 20s, that in a rookie draft I'm picking 12th or 13th.
This smells like a Spurs player.
You want to know what's crazy? And Mike hasn't read my mock draft because no one has other than me. I had him going 29th to the Spurs.
Yeah, if he gets all the way down there, I think it's almost a no-brainer that he's going to go to the Spurs because, Pop loves a project who also has incredibly almost if you're that good at steals and blocks, your instincts are there, right? You just know where to put your hands, you know where to be, you know where your body should be, you're reading plays ahead of time. And I think Pop just loves anybody who's got that kind of that twitch type of reaction along with the defensive skills. And that's what he's got.
Yeah, so he's going to be fun, and we'll see where he ends up. He's a senior, so he's one guy that is definitely going to the draft. With some of these other guys, we can't really say that. We just think they're going to. But he will definitely be in the class, so something to look forward to.
Yeah, Tyler, is there anyone else on the big board here that you're kind of keeping an eye on? I know there's a lot of these guys are just going to be like questionable role players, like you said, and could be out of the league. I think we kind of covered the players who will be fun to watch in the tournament, but also worthy of putting on your way too early rookie list for next year.
Mention one more dude, I guess, and that's Cameron Johnson from North Carolina. Really, really good three-point shooter, hitting 46.5% of his 187 three-point attempts this season. So I think that alone, right, this is another older guy. It's actually his 5th season of college basketball, Mike.
Wow, congratulations.
He played 3 years at Pittsburgh. One was cut short by injury, so he played 8 games, and then he played the last 2 for North Carolina. Already 23. This guy's another guy who's an instant role player, though. So if you're looking for somebody, just to watch that is going to be in the NBA next year, Cameron Johnson from North Carolina is probably that guy.
Yeah, I know a lot of guys who went to 5 years of college. That's cool.
Yeah, but not actually played 5 years. And when we get closer to the draft, we will talk about a few of my favorite players that are hurt, who will be probably mid to late first-round picks that I think could surprise a lot of people.
Yeah. Tyler always easily one of the top tier draft prep articles that I read. I only read a few, and Tyler's is the first one I usually read. It's well researched, and there's always like a little fantasy bent to it, which is exactly what you want to see. So stay tuned for that. Follow Tyler on Twitter at Tyler P. Watts. Follow me at Watch the Boxes in case you want to see live tweeting during March Madness of irrelevant and
I would call it
posts.
Call it spam tweeting, because that's basically what it is. He's just tweeting random stuff about games. It's mostly just spam.
Yeah, I'm mostly retweeting other people.
Yeah, spam tweeting, like I said.
I don't think that's spam tweeting. That is, I'm an influencer, Tyler.
Oh, okay. Brand influencer.
Yeah, I'm a brand influencer, and if I'm going to start a festival, it's going to be called the Dumpster Fire Festival. It's going to be held outside of the United Center, and we're going to be throwing Gar Foreman and into the dumpster, and we're setting it on fire. And I'm taking donations right now at patreon.com/watchingtheboxes. You can sign up and donate to throw Gar Foreman in a dumpster at the Dumpster Fire Festival, hosted by me, one of the top fantasy basketball influencers on Twitter. But better yet, you should just sign up for our March Madness bracket and win a prize, and get free entry to one of our listener leagues next year. So it's a win-win. So that's it for tonight. We will hopefully you guys enjoy your nonstop basketball weekend, which starts on Thursday afternoon. Tell your boss that you feel like I feel like a flu coming on Thursday, right around 1 p.m. Eastern, noon Central. I'm feeling a really bad flu coming on that's going to last just one more day. That's it.
I thought you were going to say it's going to last a whole 4 weeks or however long.
It's going to last a month and a half. If you get away with that, do that. If you got enough sick days, take them, guys. Guys, if you're not taking your sick days, you're doing it wrong. Just throwing it out there. I'm going to leave you with that. Tyler, you got anything else to plug?
No, that'll be it. It was fun. It was real, Mike.
It has been very real. Hopefully, we'll see you all in that March Madness bracket throughout the weekend, and we'll be giving updates on that. Good luck to all you in your fantasy basketball playoffs, unless you're playing me. Good night, everybody.